Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Lisa Jans, and I'm also known as Job Coach Germany. A warm and wonderful hello to you, beautiful souls out there, you wonderful miracles all around the globe. I am very happy if you decide to spend your Friday afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are around this globe, with me today. And not to keep you waiting, I am about to talk about a book that I find is very, very important for everybody to read. It's a book recommendation, and I will prepare some sort of series on this book. Yeah, but maybe a little bit of background. So maybe some of you already know that I love reading, and normally I have a pile or a stack of probably between 7 to 9 books on my bedside table, because I'm not one person that just sticks with one book, but I have this stack or pile of books next to my bedside table, or just in general around me, to pick whichever book I want to read when and how I feel like it, basically. And Samantha is here from Namibia. Thank you very much for joining me today. Maybe you can let me know what kind of whether you like books, and what kind of book has actually helped you with regards to your career, or are you just simply reading for recreational purposes? So basically, I have a pile of books next to my bedside table, and I pick the book to read that I feel like it. Yeah, so sometimes I feel like reading in a specific direction of topic, and then on another day maybe something else. Sometimes it happens that I read one chapter in one of the books, then one chapter in another book. So sometimes it happens that I read 3 different books at the same time as well. And that's why I have a pile of 7 to 9 books next to my bedside table all the time. It could be that that's due to me being a scanner personality. So that is actually a term that I heard of a couple of years ago through my women's entrepreneur group that I'm involved with. And there was one lady that talked about scanner personalities. And I think that I have some sort of this kind of personality, so that I am very much into different projects, and that I get bored very easily if I stick to one project just for one time. But what I wanted to talk to you about is that when I was younger, I was really and very much focused on reading books for recreational purposes only. And at that time, I was really into historical novels. And my favorite historical novel was that one. So in German, it's called Der Medicus, or in English, it's The Physician by Noah Gordon. So, and you can see I still have that book. And I'm still reading that book, as you can see, or I started reading this book again. So because obviously whenever you start rereading a book, there are certain aspects that you think, oh, I haven't read that the last time when I was reading it. And this is actually happening with me as well with that book. But I actually stopped reading books like that. So there were like novels, or also romantic novels, that I was reading. And when I set up my own business in 2017, my coaching business, and started working as Job Coach Germany, I stopped reading for recreational purposes only. That's when I realized, okay, when I'm reading, now I'm so free. Like, I don't have to read anything for work, like my corporate world, work life. I don't have to read anything for school or for university that I had to do over the course of the years then when I was studying, because obviously I was studying quite some time, and I always had the feeling when I was studying I didn't have the capacity in my head to read something for recreational purposes, or just simply something that I was really interested in. But when I set up my own business, that was the time when I realized, okay, so now it's the time I'm free. I can read whatever I want. I can read books that I'm interested in, and all about all of the topics that I'm interested in. So for when I'm talking to my friends, for example, it seems sometimes really weird because they think, well, do you only read like technical books? Do you only read like books that are related to your work life? Don't you ever read any more recreational books? And here, let me say, it's really like that. So for my friends, it seems kind of crazy that I'm not reading anything for recreational purposes. But the reason why I'm reading the books that I'm reading, and those are kind of technical, is because I'm so much into my topic. I'm so much into HR related topics and the future of work, new work, HR topics such as talent development and personal development, people development, and all of these things, that I can just simply consume that and read on and on and on about that. And I just simply love that, and I cannot stop. So at that time in 2017, as when I started with my job coaching business, it was that I came across a recommendation of one of my former classmates from school. Her name is Susi, and she now works in Austria. So Susi, if you ever see that video, greetings go out to you to Austria. And she talked about a book that was called Reinventing Organizations by Frederic Laloux. So, and that's the book that I'm talking about today. And it's going to be a series, or so a several episode series, that I will be talking about different chapters of that book. So Frederic Laloux is the author of this book, and this book was written in 2016 or published in 2016. Normally, you if you know how a book is written, it obviously takes several years to prepare and write that book, but once it's published, that's basically the official date when you can get it. So, and that was in 2016, and I got this version here that you can also see. It's an illustrated version. So there's also another version that is just simply with all of the different, just with the text. But this one is really cool because it's obviously an illustrated invitation to understand the contents better. And as you can see, I have marked a lot of pages, and you can see there are a lot of pictures involved, which is, for me, it doesn't really look like a technical book, but obviously there are some quotes and quotation marks and all of these things as well. So they have really done some research in here, and you will hear about that even more while I'm talking to you about this book, when I'm sharing the contents of that book. I won't share everything, so it won't be like an audiobook, but several aspects that I think are very important that we need to discuss. Now, before I dive into more why this particular book, why I'm taking out a lot of time to dive deeper into this topic with you guys, with regards to that book, I just want to read what Samantha has written. So I also love reading, but most of the time I don't finish the whole books in a week or so, because I'm very busy throughout the day with a lot of different stuff. But reading is interesting. Yeah, Samantha, that's really good. And I totally understand that. And I don't read every day. Yeah, I admit that I don't read every day, but sometimes I really enjoy reading, and I try to implement it in every day, but it's like in my daily routines. But sometimes it's just too busy, and then I don't feel like it, and that's totally fine. You can be very generous with yourself, and don't have to punish yourself if you don't read anything. It's just for me, it's very interesting what kind of books you are reading. Yeah. So now, having worked in HR for more than 10 years, I have constantly been in touch with topics such as retention rates, people development, people and culture, cultural awareness, talent acquisition, talent management, employee satisfaction, and all of these things. And they those topics have accompanied me throughout my entire path that I was forming for myself, for my career. So it already started when I studied my bachelor's in management and economics, because that's when I realized I wanted to go into HR. So that was basically, and I got my first job, my real first job in HR in 2012. So that's 10 years ago now. But I already started working with HR related topics before that, when I started studying that. And then I realized, okay, I'm even more interested in how the future of our work life will be shaped, and how it's shaped, and how we can actually influence the way how our work life will look like. So all this, like this topic or hashtag new work, or also future of work, those are topics that I've even dedicated lots of time to when I was writing seminar papers, for example, for my university. And this was also involved, for example, in my master's thesis. So I was studying 2 masters, and both of my master's thesis or dissertations were also they included the topics about the future of work. And for me, it's really important, and Petra is here, hi! So for me, it is very important that in order to shape the future, in order to understand how the future of our work life can look like, it is very important to understand where we are coming from, so that we understand the development that we have gone through, and what kind of different organizations are out there, and how the style of management is actually working out. And that's what this book is talking about. So basically, in the first part, that what I want to share with you today is talking about the different styles of organizations that are out there. And I cannot promise you how long this live will take. It might last an hour or even longer. So bear with me. If you have any ideas how you want the future of work to look like, feel free to let me know in the comments. Yeah. So I want to know from you, what do you think about the future of work? What kind of organization you are working for? So what type of organization? I will talk about the different types in a minute. And then the third one, what do you personally, individually, and as unique as you are, need in order to feel fulfilled in your work life? Okay. So my recommendation is for everybody to read this book, whether you are a business owner, the CEO, or an employee. Because if we all understand what is going on with regards to the way how we are dealing with our employees nowadays, and also with our colleagues, with our bosses, or with our team members, for example, then we can come up with a plan or an idea of what we wish and how we can influence the future and just make it better for all of us, so that we are not just simply striving for bigger, taller, faster all the time, more goals, more incentives and all of that. No, but actually taking a step back, breathing in and out, and actually feeling happy in your workplace, because that's what we have lost. So yeah, now let's dive into the first part, and I'm going to read out specific sections of this book that I think are very important. So first of all, what Frederic Laloux has found out with his team about the research that he has done is that something is broken in today's organizations. The way we run our organizations today no longer works for us. And the system has been stretched beyond its limits. So maybe some of you have heard of that, and maybe you are one of those employees for whom this applies. But a vast majority of employees are disengaged at work. So in this book, they say they have included a poll, or a research poll. So a 2013 Gallup poll found out that only 13%, so 13% of employees worldwide are actually engaged at work. And 63% are not engaged. And even 24% are actively disengaged at their workplace. And that should already show us that there is something not quite right in our work life. Okay. So our leaders in large organizations seem all powerful, and like all of us, they want to look like their life is in control. but actually everybody is hiding behind a facade or a mask, as you can see in this picture here. Yeah, so they have this person, and then obviously the mask is showing, hey, I'm smiley, everything's fine. But actually, that's not how it actually looks like. Almost all of them are tired of the rat race and the pressure, the never-ending stream of emails, meetings, and PowerPoint documents, tired of trying to make people happy, to motivate employees and achieve results. Yeah, can you relate to that? Also, what I wanted to say is that I did a poll yesterday on Instagram asking my followers whether they have heard about that book, but they said no. So 100% of you haven't heard of that, even though I have recommended it before. But let's dive more into that topic. So customers' trust in businesses, or the customers' trust in businesses, is at an all-time low. And so is their trust in brand loyalty. And here we already get an idea why we also have an issue with regards to attracting talent, because nowadays maybe you've heard of the fact that companies need to increase their brands, like their brand name. Employer branding is a new word that they need to improve in order to attract talent that is necessary in order to achieve more goals. But that is basically an issue, not just for the customers, but also for future employees. So in many countries, the health system feels profoundly broken. Children in school are churned through a fixed curriculum like widgets in a factory. And that is something that I am talking about all the time. And we will also look at different styles of schools in one of the episodes later. But just think about that. Yeah, there are the cases of children in elementary school with burnouts is just simply increasing over time, and it's getting more and more and more. And that is something that is really, that should be a huge alert for all of us. And I don't know why it's taking us so long to actually just make a difference and shape for especially also the school life in a different way. So, and also obviously everything that comes along with bigger, wider, taller, more, is that we are harming our planet, because we are obviously using and polluting the atmosphere, the water and land. And we just simply use way too much of all of the resources that we actually have. And now it's not just that the corporate world is broken, but also you can see the schools are broken. And what you have now seen, especially in the last 2 years, I mean, this book is from 2016, but especially the last 2 years, we've seen that especially our healthcare system is broken, and that we have turned hospitals into soulless factories. If you can relate to that, let me know in the comments. So now let's dive into a really interesting idea or scheme, like a color scheme that so the author of this book is called Frederic Laloux, and he is using a color scheme by Ken Wilber, who is a philosopher of human consciousness. And here I'm just showing you this color scheme, so you can see. So this is basically kind of like the base, and then we are starting with red, amber, orange, green, and then at some point it is teal. Okay, so and these are the different development leaps that we're taking a look at. And Rohit is here. Hi Rohit, and thank you very much for joining. I think joined after a long time. That's fine. That's okay, you can join whenever you want. And according to this research book, Frederic Laloux says that the humanity evolves by sudden leaps. So it's not a continuous development, but in sudden rushes, basically. And at every stage, everything changes. Every stage has brought a breakthrough in the terms of technology, and also the means of subsistence, the power structures, and also religious and spiritual outlooks, and also the way we collaborate. So from every stage we're going through, this has changed. And I'm talking about the different stages in a second. So a lot of evidence suggests that we are about to make a new leap into that teal area that the author here, Laloux, refers to as evolutionary. We happen to be in one of these transition periods where the old is starting to break down, but the new hasn't taken shape yet, which is why we are in a really great position, because it actually means that we can actually influence the way how we shape that. Okay. Now, viewed in this light, it's not extraordinary to think that we might be about to invent a whole new management paradigm. If you are one of those people who feels that it must be possible somehow to run organizations in radically more powerful, soulful, and purposeful ways, then you might come across people and encounter people that tell you that this is wishful thinking, that you are naive and that it cannot be done. Well, it turns out that it absolutely can be done. There are a number of truly outstanding organizations that already operate from the next stage. So stay tuned for further episodes in this book recommendation series that I'm doing here, because you will learn more about the different organizations and what their styles are. So let's start with the red one. So the red stage, let's go back to these stages here, and we are starting with the red stage. Okay. So the red stage is what Laloux also refers to as impulsive worldview. So for tens of thousands of years, people lived in clans of a few dozen or a few hundred people at most. These clans had respected elders, but there was no chief, no hierarchy, or no meaningful division of labor, just to keep that in mind. And then, starting about 10,000 years ago, we entered a new stage, the impulsive red. Societies with several thousands of people appeared. So I just have to say, excuse me, and I'm sorry on Instagram, because sometimes the camera also always turns off. I don't know what that is about, but yeah, just bear with me. So to deal with this whole new level of complexity, the role of the chief emerged to enforce social order. And that was done in a pretty impulsive and egocentric manner. Everything is seen through the lens of power. So that was basically the red one. Now, today we are easily appalled at red's crude use of power, and we may overlook the heroic, initiatory, pioneering quality this stage brought to the human journey. Because actually, obviously, every stage has advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons. And they are obviously, even if that red phase or stage was impulsive and egocentric, it also was helpful because tribes broke out of their usual habitats and started exploring new territories. Now, red organizations are like wolf packs. So the glue of red organizations is the loyalty and the fear the chief inspires to keep the foot soldiers in line. Just keep that in mind. These organizations tend to be unstable and don't scale well, but they are highly entrepreneurial and reactive in chaotic environments. Okay. Archetypes. So the archetype, or an example of these red impulsive worldview organizations, are like the mafia or just simply street gangs. And there were, obviously, we also want to take a look at the pros of this stage. There were two key breakthroughs. And that was, first of all, division of labor. And the second one was top-down authority. So red organizations came with two extraordinary breakthroughs: the division of labor and top-down authority. These breakthroughs can leave us with a bit of bad taste today, but historically speaking, they were major innovations that allowed groups working together to deal with unprecedented levels of complexity. So, as I said, there are always advantages and disadvantages. Now, going on to the next stage. So we've covered the red one. Now let's go on to Ember. Okay. So Ember is also referred to by Laloux as the conformist worldview. Starting around 4000 BC in Mesopotamia, a more complex worldview arose. It facilitated the leap from a world of proto-empires to the age of agriculture, states and empires, bureaucracies, and organized religions. Agrarian societies are highly stratified in social classes or castes. They are all based on some founding mythology, with God-given immutable rules of what is right and what is wrong. They have internalized rules and exercise self-discipline in service of a common belief. Guilt and shame are the glue of society, and people spend much energy trying to fit in, wearing the right clothes, doing what's expected, and thinking the right thoughts. Now, hold your breath. Surveys show that large parts of the adult population today operates from this stage. So it's not just about the organizations and how they are working, but it's especially the society and how we as human beings are actually acting. And I think it's very alarming that surveys show that large parts of the adult population today operate from this stage, that we spend much of our energy trying to fit in, trying to find out what the right clothes is, what is expected of us, and trying to think the right thoughts. Now, the archetype of an Ember organization is the army or the Catholic Church. So Ember organizations have clear ranks that stack up in a hierarchical pyramid. Ember organizations live in a world of stability and certainty. And that obviously is a pro for many of you and for many of us in general. Before I set up my own business, it was all about security and stability for me. And then when you first set up your own business, that is just out the window. I remember like one of my first classes at university that one of the professors said, if you really want to become successful, you have to set up your own business. And at that time I said, no, I'm never setting up my own business. That's way too risky. I'm a stability and certainty person. So Ember stage, everyone knows what is expected in their role. Stable rituals and processes make life predictable for everybody. And that is obviously something that many people or some people feel comfortable with. Staying in that, obviously we're staying then in our comfort zone if we can stay within our rituals and processes. Because obviously this is also something that our brain is trying to teach us or is trying to protect us from. Whenever there is change, our brain tells us, alarm, alarm, alarm. Don't do that because it's different from what we know. And we are obviously, what do we call it? Like animals of habit. So whenever we do something that is not within our process, not within our ritual, it feels like we are damaging ourselves. Anyway, there were obviously, again, breakthroughs involved in this Ember worldview. So breakthrough one was replicable processes. Any person can be replaced, even the Pope, and the organization will continue operating seamlessly. So the organizations have implemented replicable processes, or first of all, also defined processes that were replicable. And that means that whoever leaves the company, the processes can still go on. Now, whether we want that and whether that is actually soulful is another question. Breakthrough 2 was stable organization chart. Ember organizations have invented formal job titles, job descriptions, and reporting lines. Thinking happens at the top, execution at the bottom. Now think about that. Doesn't that sound like most of our organizations that we're working in nowadays? Especially me working with lots of people that are applying for new jobs. It's all about the job titles, the job descriptions, and reporting lines. It's especially like the job descriptions. It's a pain in the bum for the recruiters when we have to set up job ads, and for the applicants, it's really difficult to find jobs nowadays because the job titles are changing on a daily basis or even in minutes. Yeah. So nowadays we have job titles that 10 years ago were not even there, obviously. And people don't even know, like, for example, I always bring the example of a salesman. Yeah. So in Germany, you would look for jobs as a Verkäufer, but now everything's just done in the English with the English term. And that's just a very simple example. Yeah. There are also happy office managers, and nobody knows what they're doing. No, they are, yeah, kind of like a mixture of a secretary and an event manager, I would say. So, but who would have thought 10 years ago that there would be a position called happy office manager? Current examples of these Ember organizations are many armies, religious institutions, government agencies, public school systems, and universities are still run today along the lines of Ember organizations. They often operate on the hidden assumption that there is one right way of doing things. They find it hard to accept the need to change and to adapt. But I will tell you later on, it's obviously not always just black and white. It's not just amber, red, brown, or green, or teal, or what orange. Yeah. So it's kind of like personalities. Yeah. It's like we are always on a spectrum, and that can have certain aspects, and organizations also can have certain aspects along the lines. Okay, so we're done with red and amber. Let's go on. Let's move on with orange. Okay, so the orange one is also referred to by Laloux as achievement worldview. This is the worldview of the scientific and industrial revolutions. If I'm faster, smarter, more innovative than others in understanding and manipulating the world, I'll achieve more success, wealth, profits, market share, or whatever else I desire. A defining mantra of this perspective states that you can be anyone you want to be. You can achieve anything you set your mind to. Now, then also the implication is huge. The person in orange begins to imagine different possibilities or different possible worlds, to question existing dogmas and social contracts. In my eyes, that's actually a good thing. Then the worldview has profoundly transformed humanity in the last 2 centuries, bestowing upon us unprecedented levels of prosperity and life expectancy. This has just increased massively. Yeah. The possibility to imagine what if has also freed us from the oppression of caste system and religions, and replaced feudal governance with the rule of law and democracy. Yeah. So now everybody's asking, what if? What if? What if? Think publicly listed organizations or corporations. Think Wall Street banks. So those are examples of these orange organizations. Wall Street banks are perhaps the most striking examples, ruthlessly innovative and efficient machines in the pursuit of profits. The dominant metaphor, organizations as machines. We talk about units and layers, inputs and outputs, efficiency and effectiveness, pulling the lever and moving the needle, information flows and bottlenecks, re-engineering and downsizing. Leaders and consultants design organizations. Humans are resources that must be carefully aligned on the chart. We're talking about blueprints and then how to carefully implement them according to plan. Now, the metaphor of the machine reveals how much orange organizations can brim with energy and motion, but also how lifeless and soulless they can come to feel. There were obviously innovation breakthroughs involved, 3. So the first one was innovation. So orange organizations create departments such as research and development, marketing, and product management, and they gave birth to project teams and cross-functional initiatives open to innovations. Breakthrough 2, accountability. To innovate more and faster than others, it becomes a competitive advantage to tap into the intelligence and creativity of many brains in the organization. So we're sharing the knowledge, yeah? Form of management by objectives. Top management defines an overall direction and cascades targets downward. People below are then given some freedom to find the best way to reach those targets. A host of management practices was devised to support management by objectives such as strategic planning, yearly budgets, KPIs, balanced scorecards, performance appraisals, bonus schemes, and stock options. Where Ember relied only on sticks, the Orange came up with carrots and invented human resources in the process. So basically, that was when my job was introduced. Now, breakthrough 3 is called meritocracy. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. In Germany, it's Leistungsgesellschaft. From a historical perspective, meritocracy was a radical idea and a huge liberation. In principle, anybody can move up the ladder. The smartest should lead the pack. Resource planning, talent management, mentoring and coaching, leadership training, and succession planning are all Orange innovation or inventions. Job mobility is the norm. People are expected to change jobs every few years, and life employment is no longer seen as an ideal. That is actually something that the German labor market is heading to. So there are still, like, when I'm looking at the generation of my parents and above, it is still their intention to find a job where they can live up until they go into retirement. So you get one job and stay there until you go into retirement. Yeah. But when I that was actually also still my thinking when I first dove into that work life, up until that point when I worked in the UK, because the UK had developed differently, because then there it was common that they changed their jobs more frequently. And when we're looking at the US, for example, they're changing their jobs even more frequently. So in the US, they're changing their jobs every 1-2 years. In the UK, from my experience, they were changing jobs every 2 to 3 years. And in Germany, it is still that way, that employees are staying in their jobs for 10 years. Yeah. Just think about all of the pay rise that we're losing through that. But it also shows a lot of loyalty, right, to our employers. Now, the Orange also has a shadow. The scientific industrial revolutions have brought us enormous freedom and prosperity. Increasingly, we also witness the massive shadow they cast on our future. One shadow is innovation gone mad. With most of our basic needs taken care of, businesses increasingly try to create needs, feeding the illusion that more stuff that we don't really need will make us happy and whole. Yeah. So obviously the basic needs are met, but we still need to strive for more and more and more. It results in a predatory economy that is depleting the world's natural resources and killing off the very ecosystems upon which our survival depends. Another shadow appears when success is measured solely in terms of money and recognition. When the only successful life is the one that reaches the top, we are bound to experience a sense of emptiness in our lives. Now, when all boils down to targets and numbers, milestones and deadlines, and yet another change program and cross-functional initiative, some people can't help but wonder about the meaning of it all and yearn for something more. The Orange worldview is solidly materialistic. There is nothing beyond what we can touch, and our longing for meaning, for being in touch with something bigger than ourselves, has nowhere to turn. So here we can see, even though there were major breakthroughs in this third stage, the Orange stage, there was also a massive shadow involved. Now let's move on to green. So we've covered red, amber, orange. Now let's move on to green. And I need to, it's quite warm, The rain has not started yet here. So let me just have a drink. Green, by Laloux referred to as pluralistic worldview. People at this stage are keenly aware of the orange's shadow, the materialistic obsession, the social inequality, the loss of community, the harm inflicted to nature. They strive to belong, to foster close and harmonious bonds with everyone. They insist that all people are fundamentally of equal worth, that every voice be heard. Green is very present in postmodern academic thinking, in nonprofits, and among social workers and community activists. And you can see a really cool picture here that people are like in a circle holding hands. A new metaphor, organizations as families. So, many leaders of green pluralistic worldview organizations refer to their organizations as a family or a community where everyone has a place, where colleagues look after one another, where the happiness of every member is important to the organization's overall success. We already, or again, had several breakthroughs. First, empowerment. People operating at this stage have a natural dislike for hierarchies. Green organizations therefore try to downplay hierarchy and to empower employees to push decisions down to the lowest level. One image often used in green organizations is an inverted pyramid. So frontline employees at the top and the senior executives and the CEO at the very bottom and the CEO at the very servant leaders in service to employees. How does that sound? Is any one of you in an organization already where the CEO works as a leader that is of service to you? That would be very interesting. Middle managers are trained to be coaches to their teams, to lead from behind and inspire instead of directing from above. Sounds really cool, doesn't it? Breakthrough 2, values-driven culture. In green organizations, shared values aren't simply a fig leaf hidden or hiding a basic pursuit of profit or market share. They truly, so the values, the shared values, truly inspire employees, and they provide guidance to empowered employees that then make the right decisions. Breakthrough 3, stakeholder value. And I'm saying stakeholder, not shareholder. Green organizations question the concept of shareholder value, where a company's primary obligation is to maximize profits for shareholders. Green organizations insist that businesses have a responsibility not only to investors, but also to employees, customers, suppliers, local communities, society at large, and the environment, and that they must balance all these interests and not just focus on one. There are already some examples of companies who act in green pluralistic worldview in that stage. So green perspective on management can often be found in nonprofits, NGOs, and social ventures. People have come to realize the importance of soft aspects of management. Green organizations often strive to inspire their employees to great things, leading them to outperform more traditional command and control organizations. And the examples are Southwest Airlines, Ben & Jerry's, and the Container Store. They are all well-known examples of organizations whose founders have championed green organizational practices. There are, however, as we know, with each stage, contradictions. So the contradictions of green organizations, there are also cons of that. There are some wonderfully vibrant values and culture-driven organizations, so we know it works. And yet, making decentralization and empowerment work on a large scale is no easy feat. There is an inherent contradiction in those models, in those green organizational models. It aspires to be egalitarian and consensus-seeking, but it retains the hierarchical, pyramidal structure of Orange. There is often a disturbing disconnect between espoused values and reality, which causes disappointment and confusion. More often than not, it leads to organizational paralysis. Unsavory power games break out in the shadows. And that's obviously very toxic. Deep down, they would love to function without the pyramid, without the need for bosses. But they haven't found a way to do that in practice. Successful green companies have found that they need to invest and keep investing a lot of time, energy, and money to train and remind managers to be empowering servant leaders. Okay, so now you can also see here, there are these different stages. We started with red, amber, orange, green, and now what's going on. Here, it basically says that we shouldn't say that we are more involved, or that certain companies, corporations are more evolved than the previous stages. For example, that's not the case. There are always, as I said, we are kind of like on a spectrum. So we have certain aspects of each of these stages. And now it's basically a way of being aware of that. Yeah, it's important that we are aware. A framework is simply or is a useful simplification, but no organization is 100% orange or green. Okay, so you need to be aware of that. The developmental framework helps us to make sense of different worldviews. And Laloux refers to the organizational processes, structures, and culture, but not to the people. So that basically means finding out about those different stages. It's not about you as an individual, you as a person, how we are acting. You can just think about, okay, maybe in that situation, I acted more in that stage, or in another situation, I acted more in an amber stage, in a green stage, or whatever. So basically, when we're talking about a framework like that, it's more about the management practices, the way the organization recruits, manages performance, makes budgets, sets targets, and formulates strategy. Now, let's take an example. How do the different types of organizations handle compensation and incentives? In the red phase, the boss decides how to share the spoils. In the amber stage, salaries are typically fixed and determined by a person's level in the hierarchy, fixed status markers such as the person's diploma or degree. In the orange stage, there are the beliefs that we have individual targets and incentives, so it's very individual. So if people reach predetermined targets, they deserve a sizable bonus. That's the orange view. Now, the green pluralistic worldview is team bonuses. Because the green paradigm stresses cooperation over competition, individual incentives make way for team bonuses in green organizations. Leaders aim to reduce excessive wage disparities. And we are obviously always interested in transparency so that we know what's going on and what others in our company are earning, where a few years ago it was still nobody is supposed to talk about money. Now you can take a look at this overview, which I also very like. So we had this wolf pack, then we had the chief. Then obviously we go on to orange with bigger, higher, more, the innovative stage, and then this pluralistic group of people with all their pros and cons. Now let's move on to the teal evolutionary worldview. So that's the final stage that we can now shape. So we are about to move on to this last or that next stage in our evolution. So Laloux is referring to this as the color teal and the evolutionary worldview. A new stage of consciousness is currently coming to the fore. And then obviously Laloux, the author of this book, is always referring to Ken Wilber, this who was talking about the different color schemes, and Ken Wilber came up with the color teal. Because it is still very much emerging, it's too early to say how this will end up shaping the world. Okay. It is a profoundly new worldview, one that opens radical new possibilities. So what are some markers of this worldview? The world as a place for individual and collective unfolding. The world in Teal is no longer seen as fixed and God-given, nor say, like an intricate, soulless mechanism. Instead, the world is seen as a place where we are called to discover and journey towards our true self, to unfold to our unique potential, to unlock our birthright gifts. This is like a Copernican revolution in an age that tells us we should strive to succeed, that we can become anything we want if we only put our mind to it. People who embrace a Teal perspective learn to let go of preconceived ideas of what they should be and learn to listen within, to go where life calls them. Taming the ego. The ability to listen to inner voices comes from an important psychological development. In Teal, we start to disidentify from ego. We learn to look at our ego from a distance and often realize how our ego's fears, ambitions, and desires have been secretly running our lives. We can learn to minimize our need to control, to look good, to fit in. Many scholars note that this results in a profound shift that increases our capacity to trust others and to trust life. So it echoes wisdom traditions that have long affirmed that we can live from fear and scarcity or from trust and abundance. In Teal, setbacks and mistakes no longer need to be met with fear, anger, or shame. We can truly see them as opportunities to learn about who we are and grow into more of our selfhood. Inner rightness as a compass. When we are fused with our ego, we are driven to make decisions informed by external factors. Now, in Teal, we shift from external to internal yardsticks in our decision making. We are now concerned with the questions of inner rightness. Does this decision seem right? Am I being true to myself? Is this in line with who I sense I'm called to become? And most of all, or that I find very important, am I being of service to the world? We have a yearning for wholeness. This realization often triggers a deep yearning for wholeness, for reuniting with all of who we are, with others around us and all forms of life and nature. A deep realization that we are all deeply interconnected, deeply one. Okay, so that's basically the introduction. We have finished part 1 and we will go on in another episode with part 2. And that is dealing with how do these new organizations work then? Yeah, and we will take a look at different examples. Thank you very much for staying with me. I hope you liked that. As I said, I would recommend every business owner, CEO, employee, whoever you are out there, to read this book. It's really, really important for us to understand from what kind of perspective we're acting, what kind of stage we're in certain situations and stages. And obviously for you to analyze what kind of corporate culture you are living in. And does that suit who you are and what you stand for, what your values are? Yeah. I always try to encourage my coachees to think about your values and the company values and whether that fits together or whether it's colliding, because that's an indicator why you don't feel fulfilled in your work life. Okay. And just think about all the time that you spend in your work day, in your work life, 8 hours a day. That's a lot of time. Yeah. Then you go home, do Netflix and chill, and then you sleep. So you want to make sure that that time that you're spending in your workplace is actually filled with activities that you actually like to be doing. Okay. All right. So that was quite interesting. I wish you a wonderful Friday, a great start into your weekend, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Thank you very much for joining me. See you soon. Bye-bye.